Oops, oh, it's that time already on my clock. So welcome everyone. This presentation is Assignments, A New Hope, and will be presented by Earl Netzel. He's a Skyger and an Apereo Fellow and a Senior Software Engineer at Longsight and has a Bachelor of Science from UMUC. Please note that, well, this isn't really true. Attendees really are not muted on entry. I'm trying to mute you. So if you can mute yourself if I don't get to you, and you can ask a question anytime, therefore. Otherwise, you can enter questions in the chat box. Enter questions at any time, and we'll address them during the session or at the end. And also, this session is being recorded and will be available later on the Sky YouTube channel. If you have any problems with audio or video, please enter a comment in the chat box. And there you go. Thanks, Earl.
Well, thank you for that introduction, and thanks everyone for coming to the see the changes that are occurring in assignments. I kind of labeled this presentation "A New Hope" in the spirit of Star Wars, so you're going to see some Star Wars action. So let's get started. Oops. So slow down. So I first want to start out that there's three topics I'm going to go over. It's pretty much what the goals of the project was, what the future is, and kind of why this project was started. It's kind of takes, again, it kind of making some analogies back to Star Wars, but this is kind of like, assignments is in a period of civil war. There's a lot of issues with it, and we need to make some changes to the back end in order to kind of make it much better for all of us. So with that, somebody needs to mute me. Is that Stanford that I'm seeing?
There's a low price Christmas for everyone at Mzansi's #1 supermarket.
The Cancer Association of South Africa.
Yeah, I can't mute them.
And I have celebrated our birthday with gratitude, knowing that.
Can you please mute yourself? There we go. There it is. Okay, great. Thanks. Sorry about that. So let's move on to the goals. So the goals of this project were primarily to update the persistence from the traditional XML document to a relational design. We're also going to be adding a new feature called soft deletion to assignments. And the idea is that we would come up with a new assignment service, and will also be which will also have a lot of unit tests associated with that service. I'd like to extend a special thanks to Jason Dom from the American Public University System, because they are pretty much the entity that that is paying for all of this to take place. So special thanks to them. So we'll start out by talking about, some of this is a little technical, so forgive me for everybody. I'll try to be high level as I can. But some of this is, at the heart of this project is the change from the traditional XML storage to this relational data model, right? I've listed some issues here that that support this change. For example, Sakai has this really complex nested class structure around the old traditional XML document, and a lot of this is like these nested classes and things like that, and it's really complex. So we remove that complexity, which is just a huge improvement right there. typically when we do make changes to assignments, so when an assignment is actually created, an XML doc is formed, and this is sent to the database. Anytime an instructor goes back in and makes a change to the XML doc, basically the document needs to be rewritten in its entirety. So for example, if I'm just changing, the honor pledge or something like that, some simple little change, instead of just saying, oh, just make that little, flip this little bit over there, it's actually not that simple. It actually creates the entire XML document and has to re-save that entire document to the database. So small little changes are not actually efficient. It's no different if you were to change every option. So that's an issue. So the assignment, the documents are all organized, assignments are all organized per site, right? Which means when you access a site, assignments in a site, you basically have to read in all of the XML documents, and then you have to process them. And you do that every single time, whether you're a student or an instructor. This continually happens. It's very inefficient. Currently there are 3 types of assignment XML documents. There's one for the assignment, there's one for the assignment content, which the assignment and the assignment content actually create the assignment. Okay, there's the content, which is contains the if you will, some of the more of the information that's entered into the assignment, like the instructions and that kind of stuff. Then there's the submissions, the individual student submissions in the assignment. So there's actually 3 documents. There's 2 documents for an assignment, and then every student has their own submission document. So there is one pro to this approach, and it's that XML has this high flexibility. And the same thing could be said for JSON. So a lot of this stuff when I'm talking about also can be used in the same concept as JSON. And for that matter, any serializable entity, it would play. But just some people in there think, well, what if it was JSON? No, it's going to have the same issues. The only difference between XML and JSON is they're just different formats. Another thing that you lose with the XML doc implementation is you lose a lot of database functions that are provided by the database engine, such as like date and time functions. There's all kinds of functions that databases provide these days, and when you're looking at XML docs, you can't use most of those. There's also a lot of people that hook their Sakai system or their database to like a business intelligence tool. There's usually typically limited compatibility when it comes to like XML fields and things like that compared to the normal traditional database. The other thing is that Sakai's XML implementation is pretty much kind of homegrown. They do use, a library to actually do some of the XML serialization, but all of the creating the documents and stuff, that's all done inside assignments. For example, if we were going to be using let's say a lib to serialize an object into its XML form, there are good libraries that do that now. Like one of them is called Jackson, and that would do all this for you, and you don't need to do it. So again, this goes back to that assignments has, kind of its own way of doing stuff. Let's see, Sakai also has its own, again, that goes back to the XML document builder. That was kind of what I just mentioned. And then the last and this is probably a big thing, when an XML doc is written to the database, it is all text, right? So think of what could be in that XML document. We have integers, we have Booleans like true and false values, we have dates and times. All of that all of that stuff is all serialized into text, right? One of the things that database engines provide is efficient storage for those particular types. So for example, if I need to store a true or false value, well, database engine provides a very efficient mechanism to store a true or false value that takes up the a very small amount of space. Same thing for dates and times. Dates and times have a specific storage within a database engine that is efficient. When you take all these things and you store them as text, you remove all of those benefits. They're all gone. And actually, this violates what's called first normal form. If you ever get into database, you'll learn about normal forms. There's like first, second, third, and this kind of violates the first normal form. So this is what Sakai Assignments in 11 has now. It has these things. The only real pro for it is that XML has this high flexibility. Meaning, if I want to add a new field to the XML doc, I don't need to change anything. I don't need an alter statement for the database to update a field or anything like that. It's pretty, it's flexible in that capacity. That's its pro. And then everything else in there is a con. All right. So let's move on. And here are some examples, just because I've been talking about this for a little while. So I wanted to provide a few examples of what these look like. So here's an assignment content, right? And this is what the XML document looks like, right? Now notice like these properties, they're all base 64 encoded. So it takes a string there, and it actually even makes it base 64 encoded, which adds 2 chars for every single char, right? And so that's even another, like, a lot of these fields are base 64 encoded, which then again also adds to its inefficiency with storage within the database. But anyway, this gives you an idea of like the kinds of fields that are on the XML, right? And so we'll move on. Here's what the assignment. Remember I told you there's assignment content, and then there's the assignment edit actually, and this is or the assignment. And this is just showing that there's 2 XML docs for every assignment, right? So it's not just one document, it's 2. The idea is that one rarely changes and the other one changes more often, is I think what the idea was. Again, moving on, you can just, and this is what a submission would look like. This is a student submission. So for example, you can see there's attachments, again, it's just an XML document with all the data associated with it. This is what we're moving towards, right? So this is our new relational model. All those XML documents will now equate to this ER diagram. And this is what we will have. Note, what I will draw your attention to is, if you notice a lot of these fields, notice how like the assignment ID is a varchar, right? So that's a text field, that's 36 chars. Notice we got all these bit types, right? We've got date time types. Again, all these are efficient storage types for those values. And so those are the kinds of, that's that first normal form violation that I was talking about previously, where storing these types in the right way it makes it way more efficient. And again, obviously it's relational, so we have different table structure. We have different tables storing different pieces of data. Again, this is what, and probably another big thing to notice. Remember when I kept saying there's 2 XML docs for every assignment? Notice here, there's only 1. We don't need 2 XML docs to do this. We don't need 2 forms of storage to formulate an assignment. Here it's just this one table, right, that stores all of the assignments options or stores all of the most of all the data that was between those two XML docs is now in this one table. Moving on. So we got a soft delete feature coming up, right? This is probably a lot of people probably be happy with this. Again, this is primarily this, is going to really help with, because instructors accidentally delete their assignment and then you got to go back to a database backup and reload it. So again, so this is going to help with that a lot. We'll probably still allow administrators to actually permanently delete an assignment, because there might be cases where there is potentially something that actually should be deleted. But the idea there is that someone who has an administrator type permission in the system could then go and just delete it. Again, some of this is still open. We're not for sure how, maybe that will change or something like that. But the other thing too is, like, for example, if you're going to import, when you're doing a assignment import from site to site, obviously we won't import deleted assignments and that kind of stuff. So again, welcome this new soft delete feature. I know a lot of people are going to be happy about that. So we've got the new assignment service will have unit tests. The previous one had no unit tests. The new one will have lots of tests to it. What does this provide? So we talk about QA and we talk about all these things. When anybody makes a change to, for example, to assignments in the service area, when there's a test around it, that's actually kind of QA. So we're always hard pressed for QA with anything we do. And a lot of times it's really, it's important to have unit tests around the services and things, because when people do make changes, you want those changes to be tested. So this assignments previously had no tests, no unit tests. It only actually had one. It was like, it was in the UI and it was around sorting. It was called an assignment comparator. And I think that was like really the only test it had. Now it has plenty of tests. So this is a welcome change, and there will be more and more tests added to it as time goes on. So anyway, let's keep going on. Okay, so now we get to the big question of, I probably, all of what I've been talking about goes to the why. But the why, the goal was kind of if I go back to my Star Wars thing here, the goal was actually, Princess Leia saying, hey, R2, here's the plans, now, so here's our goals. And then the Death Star is the why, because, it's going to, destroy something. So, if you could almost draw analogies to the Death Star to other like LMS markets and things like that, other LMSs in the market. And, we need to move Sakai forward so that it can still be, a competitive and a product that people want to use. So, we want to simplify it, right? Mostly reduce the existing complexity, right? We want it to be performant, right? We want it to be easier to support. I can tell you, anybody that's supported assignments has found it very frustrating to support it because of the store, because the XML doc makes it very difficult to support, because you can't make changes to it very easily, like the way you can some other things, in the relational way. You can just go and say, hey, I want to change this column, or I want to change this field. It's easy to do. In XML, it's not so easy. And all of this will add to our sustainability. So we'll talk. So again, this is just a duplicate of that other slide that I talked about, but this, again, because the why, I kind of talked about some of this, but this is really what it just this set of issues here is kind of one of the reasons why we really want to move away from the XML store. And I don't want to say that the XML store is a bad you know, like a bad solution. There is a use case to use XML or JSON storage options, right? There is a valid use case to do that. It's just that assignments, this isn't a valid use case for that, right? So that's kind of, so I don't want to, if I can go back to 10 years, you know, 15 years ago when assignments was probably first created, and actually when Sakai was being created in its early stages, there was this idea that the XML, this XML document, you know, if you're in a highly, you know, changing system, you know, the XML document is actually, you know, it was kind of like the new kid on the block, and you know, it was kind of, you know, it was a new way of storing things, and at that time, so that's kind of why the XML document, you know, why Sakai kind of gravitated around it, because it was kind of like the thing to do back then. But if you Google now, you will see a lot of people say this type of solution has its place. It's not what assignments. It doesn't fit assignments though. So again, I don't want to make it sound like this XML storage is something someone should never do. It's just, you need to have the right use case. So performance, I'll talk a little bit about performance. So much of this goes into assignments is going to be way more performant than it previously was, right? So that's the first stake in the ground here. And this kind of goes into a little bit, this slide just talks about a little bit about why that is. For example, much of the logic that was in assignments read in all of these XML docs, and then it would process those XML docs, right? It would, you know, look up whether or not they were group-based, whatever have you. You know, whatever the UI was calling for, it had to read in all the other XML docs, and then it had to filter them out, right, to find the right one, right? And so that was what that would happen. Every request to assignments, that happens because it needs to read in all the XML docs. This kind of it's like this selecting of all the documents and processing them all the time is very intensive. Assignments performance gets worse the more assignments there are, and the larger the classes are, because the larger the classes are, the more submissions. Also, the more people accessing assignments. And if you have a class or a course that has a lot of assignments, you're going to see, you know, there's definitely performance and implications there because you'll be processing these documents so much. So the idea here is that much of this logic that is reading all the XML docs, all of this can be rewritten into SQL queries now, right? And this translates into a reduction of the amount of code that is actually needed, because we would typically have a lot of these, you know, methods that are, you know, that would filter all this stuff, and now you can just do this stuff in the actual SQL query. And it's way more efficient to only return the data from the database that is actually needed at that point. We don't need to return, you know, if you had, you know, a lot of us, let's say you had 20 assignments, and let's say there were 100 users in the class, or 100 students. So you'd have 2,000, potentially 2,000 submissions, right? It doesn't make sense to return, you know, a large chunk of all of these documents to search when you should just say, hey, I need that specific one. Just return me that one. That's what this gives us. That's one of the performant things that we're going to gain from this. The other great thing is caching. Caching in assignments, there was none before. No caching at all. So now we have caching in assignments. thanks. It's centered around Hibernate's standard query cache and its second level cache, which we will get. And I've seen the improvements already. It's pretty drastic. It's going to be, I mean, it's a really nice improvement. And also now, of course, the database storage is now more efficient because we're storing the right types. And so the footprint of our actual is actually reduced. We actually, the size of the database is actually, before and after is actually smaller, which is nice. Again, this simplification, this slide goes back to what I just mentioned about, we have, like, for example, here, I just have a sample method that goes and does all kinds of this filtering and all this stuff, and it has to read in each XML doc, and it has to process things. And a lot of that method can be reduced down to a simple query saying, hey, get me the assignment submission that relates to this assignment, and optionally has the I'm actually searching in the group, or I'm searching for a particular user, and it can be and this method I think is like 150 lines, and it could probably reduce down to just a couple of lines due to some SQL, where all of the searching is done in the SQL query. It's awesome. So getting to the end, this is kind of like the last big point. We're talking about, so this is all great news, but, can we, what could be future changes that we could look at doing for assignments, right? So here are a couple, I just put in a couple of points here that we could look at continuing down this road of improving the assignments tool. And one is that we remove a lot of the current velocity. We bring in Spring to do a lot of the servlet, to swap over all the servlets to this MVC style. It reduces a lot of code. We should probably think about, Apache came out with Velocity 2.0. We could think about upgrading to that. They came out this year. That is Velocity, Apache Velocity, is the UI technology that's actually used. The other thing, probably a huge thing is tables in assignments. We have tables, and it would be nice if we could remove these old Velocity, like these paged action tables, and just put in JQuery tables, like a nice bootstrap JQuery table would be really awesome. That would simplify a lot of things. I know that assignments LTI content, this is a plug out to Chuck Sev, because I know that he's ready to bring LTI content item to assignments, much the same way that lessons kind of has this capability, which I know a lot of people will love that feature. We'll continue just to make general improvements, like removing more logic from the tool, evolving the service, adding more unit tests, all those kinds of things. Again, this was just real quick. I kind of mentioned this already. This is just a quick slide on, removing this paged resource action. This does all the paging in Velocity. It's kind of a heavyweight, complex thing, and it's just, it could be so much more efficient. Let's see. Bootstrap tables would be real nice. I think I have, yep, here it is. Here's an example of a bootstrap table. Imagine if our assignment table, like listing all of our assignments, looked like a table like this. People would probably be very happy. And so now I'm going to just open it up to general questions that anybody may have. Becky, if you want to maybe, tell people how they might be able to do that. I don't know if they just unmute and they want to ask, or we can.
Yep, you can unmute. You can unmute, or you can type in a message in the chat box, either one.
Yeah, I'm just going to try to look at where the
Yeah, if you click on if folks can click on Manage Participants, beside your name, you should be able to click on Unmute. I'd unmute everybody, but there was some people with some cats and dogs and kids.
Yeah, that's probably bad. I mean, interesting. I can't see, for some reason, I can't see the chat. I don't know why. It's not filling out the window.
Oh, there's a question. I'll let you know what it is
Sure.
in chat.
Yeah.
From Christian, will there be a migration ETL job to migrate old assignments to the new assignments?
Yes. So very good question. I'm happy that that question was asked. A very important question. So yes, there definitely will. So the one good thing is there are 3 assignments tables basically related to assignments. There are some other tables, but they're related to peer assessment and the model answer stuff. Those tables aren't really changing that much. They kind of stay the way they are. The 3 assignments tables are actually going to be untouched. I actually don't change those 3 tables at all. And what we do is we create new tables with the new structure, and then there will be there will be a job that will be run. It's probably going to be courts related potentially, where this job will read the old tables and take all that data and put it into the new tables. So it is something that you're going to have to, run after you upgrade from, like, let's say 11 to 12. You'll run this job once. If for some reason something didn't go right, well, the good thing is that we're not touching the old tables, so you don't have to worry about. And I would say, you can keep the old tables around for as long as you need, until you're comfortable that things are working correctly with the new table structure.
Okay, there's another question. There's a question from Sean. Will this hold also for site archived XML?
So there's a good so with sidecar, so with the XML. So one of the things that that has happened is in this new implementation, we still can serialize from XML and actually JSON. I added JSON actually, so we can serialize any of the old documents to and from to the new assignments. So that's one good thing. So that this way, because we obviously need that compatibility, because there are people that are going to want to be able to do that, and it definitely can be done. The only big difference is that some of the fields have changed their name, and so there potentially needs to be. I might update something to. I might make a change to actually accommodate some of that. But yes, that is definitely going to be possible, because again, all the stuff just serialized to XML. And I will say in the new assignments, it uses the Jackson library to do all the serialization, and it can serialize to XML or JSON.
Okay, that so far is the questions. Anyone else have a question?
Yeah, is there something somebody would like to know? I mean, I can, while we're waiting for questions, I can mention that all this work that's been done up till now, there still needs to be, I've laid the foundations for all of this stuff for improvements to happen. Like some of the things that still need to happen is some of these big methods that I was mentioning, they still need to be if you will, they need to be looked at, and they need to be, and now that we have this relational model, these methods can now be, if we will, SQL, translated into SQL. So what I'm saying is like, there's still a lot of stuff out there that I did not write the SQL to make it more performant, let's say. And a lot of that stuff can still happen. Again, time is of the essence with Sakai 12, so you know, I can't go in and, you know, and continue to update all of these things with what time we have. So I expect some of that evolution to still continue even after 12. You know, we'll probably hit the more performant topics first, and or the more performant method, you know, like the methods that are cost more performance. We'll probably identify them, and then we'll say, yeah, this one needs to be, you know, we'll prioritize them or something like that. So just because I've laid this foundation doesn't mean all the work has been completed with making it super, you know, with making it as performant as it can be.
And that could lead into the next question. Is the tool ready for QA in nightly servers? From Wanyo?
So that's a good question. So it's very close to that. I would say I am wrapping up some group assignment, some of the group assignment issues that I've seen. And once that is done, we are performing, we're starting testing in-house already with our QA tester. They started this last week testing everything but group assignments, because I'm going through that to make sure that I don't see any, you know, trying to get rid of any issues that I've seen there. And once, but I would say once the group assignment stuff is done, and our QA tester has kind of gone through most of it, then I would say the community can begin testing it, which shouldn't be, which will take however long. But we are doing QA testing. It started, but so it should be real soon. I mean, the community could start testing, but if you did, you'll probably run into issues that we're already aware of and fixing. And it's just, we don't want to waste your time with that. That's the main reason why we've been kind of telling the community to, hold off on the testing of assignments, because we don't want, like, a lot of people opening up the issues that we already know about.
And Sean from Western U said, "Thank you, Earl, for all your effort and work on this initiative. It was really needed. And this is a great start to updating assignments for modern Sakai."
Yes, exactly. I totally agree with that. And this is kind of, goes back to, just improving Sakai and moving it forward. And it's things like these that I'll send out another shout out to American Public University System for getting with us and getting this project going. And this is something that Sakai needs to happen. A lot of people like to look at new features and say, "Oh, I need this new feature," but we really need some institutions to actually say, "You know what? Where can we just make improvements and actually support that effort, as well."
And Sean also said thank you as well.
Okay, thanks. And I know that sometimes that's not not appealing, right? Nobody likes, there's like no real, aside from the new soft delete feature, there's no new feature. But, so I know that's a tough sale at some places, but again, I appreciate Jason Dom's efforts here in making this project happen. And hopefully everybody will thank him at the Sakai conference this year coming up.
And Lori said that the improvements to performance are well worth it. And so did Sean.
Yep. Yeah, it's going to be great. It's pretty cool. When I turn on just caching in the Hibernate, it was just like all of a sudden you saw, like, in a site with like 50 students or something, you saw like the queries go down from like 100 to like 3, 4, 5, that kind of thing.
Good.
So it's a huge difference.
Well, we got 1 minute if anybody else wants a quick question.
Okay. I guess thanks everybody for coming, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your virtual conference day.
Thanks, Earl. Thanks for keeping us updated on what's going on. And lots of people are saying thanks, Earl. Have a good rest of the conference, everyone.
Chat window finally. It's in the More tab is what it is.
You found it? Now you can see all the thank yous.
Thank you to everyone, too.
All right, I've got to sign off, everyone. Thanks for coming.